All right, so we're on day 7 of putting it all together for polynomials. These first two, again, we're just kind of thinking about what we've learned about polynomials, maybe being given to us in a different method or a different way, but still being able to come up with the same conclusions. So for questions 1 and 2, it says to sketch the graph of the polynomial with our given conditions. So for question 1, it says it's degree 5. It's going to have 4 extrema. That means 4 turning points. And that's okay because remember, degree 5 can have 4, 2, or 0 turning points. It's going to have a negative leading coefficient and only one x-intercept. Okay? So the first thing I would say to do is to take care of that negative leading coefficient. That means it's going to be down here. All right, now we're only going to have one x-intercept. If you want, you can make it cross right now, but that just means it can never cross again, okay? So if I make it cross right now, and I'm going to graph instead of left to right, I'm graphing right to left. If I make it cross, it can never go back through, but I have to have 4 turning points. So at this point, I have my one x-intercept, so we'll check that off, and it cannot cross again. So I'm going to go up, I'm going to go down, I'm going to go up. Currently, I have 1 extrema, 2 extrema. I need to have 2 more. So I'm going to keep going. And because it's degree 5, I know that my end behaviors have to be opposite directions, okay? So notice how I have 1 extrema, 2 extrema, 3, 4. And then degree 5, that's telling us, 1, it's an odd degree, so my end behavior must be going opposite directions. Okay? So when doing these, there's different parts you can, start with. Obviously, when you look at the degree, you want to think about it. Okay, what do I know about degree 5? I could have 4 turning points, 2 turning points, or only 1. I could also have 5 x-intercepts, right? Or 3 or 1. So you kind of want to, as you're going through the entire process, think about the big picture. So now this next one, degree 4, that's even degree. So that means end behavior we know will go the same direction, right? We want to graph 3 extrema, and that's the max we can have, remember, because degree 4 can have 3 turning points or 1. We have a positive leading coefficient and 2 x-intercepts. So let's think about this. Positive leading coefficient, that means that to the right, our end behavior needs to be going up, right? Now, because it's an even degree, degree 4, we can also put in our left end behavior right now if you'd like to show we know that that's even. Now we're going to have 3 extrema, but only 2 x-intercepts, okay? So you could show this a couple ways. You could make those 2 x-intercepts bounce. You could also have it pass through, but notice that we do need 3 extrema. That means 3 turning points. So it's going to go up a little bit, come back down, and then pass through. Okay, so notice here, I have 1, 2, 3 extrema, and then notice x-intercepts 1, 2. So it passes all of those conditions. Positive leading coefficient, 2 x-intercepts, 3 extrema. And if you find that once you're done, it doesn't pass all of the conditions, maybe try shifting your graph up a little bit or down a little bit, or maybe making your max and mins, those extrema, maybe not so high, or maybe needs to be a little bit higher. So you are going to need to possibly, when you're doing these, erase and adjust, okay? But obviously, you want to check off the things that you know for sure are true. All right, so this next problem, I'm going to give you this graph. I'm going to ask you to identify the least degree, and we're going to classify the extrema, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about what's happening with this graph, okay? So when you're asked, what is the least degree, what you want to ask yourself is, how many turning points? How many extrema, okay? So that's what you want to look for. How many peaks and valleys? So notice here, you have 2 extrema. You have 1 valley and 1 peak, right? So what that's telling us is that this polynomial must be degree 3, degree 5, degree 7, degree 9, any odd degree that's greater than 2, okay? Because we have 2 turning points. So since you have 2 turning points, that means the least degree is the 3rd degree. If I just asked you what's the possible degree, you could list 3, 5, 7, 9, anything odd, but it has to be greater, okay? Now the last part, we're going to classify the extrema. So let's look at the low one here, the valley, okay? So we know it's a minimum, and what you have to decide is it a local minimum or an absolute, okay? So when we look at this, notice that your end behavior is actually going down to negative infinity, so that is going to go farther down than that valley. So that's going to be considered a local minimum, okay? A local extrema, because it is a valley, but it's not the lowest low on our graph, all right? Now let's look at the peak, which is right here. So we know that that's a maximum. And then you have to ask yourself, is that a local maximum or is it an absolute? Well, look at your end behavior over here. This is going up to positive infinity. That means that your graph over here is going higher than that peak, right? So this graph's not going to have an absolute max. It's just going to have a local maximum. It is a peak, right, along the way, but it is not the highest high. To be an absolute maximum, it must be a highest high, okay? And something that I want you to start thinking about getting ready for day 8 is, where is this graph decreasing and increasing, okay? Again, we're not gonna write it out, but I want you to start thinking about it. Think about if this was a roller coaster and you're working left to right. You are decreasing until you hit that minimum, right? Then it changes and it starts to increase again until it reaches the maximum, right? And then once it hits that peak, it starts to decrease again. Okay, so remember, minimums happen when the graph goes from decreasing to increasing, and maximums happen when your graph goes from increasing to decreasing. Okay, so now tomorrow what we're going to get started with is we're going to look at we're going to actually find the highest high and the lowest low, okay? And we're also going to state these intervals of increasing and decreasing. So it's really important that you practice this so you're ready to look at the last day of putting it all together. So now for the rest of the class period, you should be finishing up your homework, and that is it.
Have a great day.